everybody, and thank you for being here tonight. I am Valerie Broken Broke. For people who don't know me, my husband and I moved to Winston in 2003, and we've raised 3 kids here. I am an immigrant from France, as you might be able to tell by my accent. I became a US citizen in 2006. I ran for county commissioners in District B in 2024, and I lost. A few months ago, I read this quote from Chris Hayes. In a distracted age, focus is power, and having an inability to focus is giving away power. I think I'm not the only one feeling overwhelmed right now. It's a lot, you all. I've been questioning that you all for a while. Hope it's okay. We need to be hyper-focused. When Terry LeGrand gathered a group in February to discuss what we could do, we decided to focus our attention on one race in 2026. And that race is NC House 74, represented by Jeff Sanger. This is the only flippable seat in Forsyth County for the North Carolina General Assembly in 2026. All the other seats are safe for Democrats or Republicans. For people who don't know who Jeff Sanger is, all you need to know is that he endorsed Mark Robinson and still has a picture of them together on his Facebook page. Since our group at Forsyth did not really know what we were doing, we reached out to Amy and Bree at FLIPNC. FLIPNC, as the name suggests, has been helping flip seats in North Carolina since 2018. We are beyond happy to be partnering with them to flip NC 74 and build a blue wave in Forsyth County in 2026. After meeting with them, we realized that we also need to focus on the 4 judicial seats up for re-election next year, including the Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls. And I hope you'll get some amazing t-shirts at the end of the presentation that Bree and Amy are wearing. So tonight you will hear from Amy and Bree from Durham, who drove all the way in the rain to be here with us tonight. And on how we can build a blue wave in Forsyth County. Then we'll finish with Terry Grant, who will talk about how we are going to build this wave with canvassing. So thank you again for being here tonight. I hope you feel compelled to join Fair Forsyth and canvass with us in 25, 26. Because of your involvement, I'm confident we can make positive change in Forsyth County and beyond. So thank you again for being here tonight. And to Bree and Amy.
Hi. How are you guys doing? Great. Thank you so much for being here. Wow, this is a full room. We're just so happy to be here. I'm Bree. This is Amy. We are the co-founders of FLIPNC. Before we get started, I'm wondering if you locals can settle a debate we were having on the way here. Raise your hand if the proper way to pronounce the name of this county is Forsyth.
Forsyth.
It's Forsyth.
Yeah.
What did you win? But some people say Forsyth, which is how I used to say it. Yeah. Forsyth.
No, that's the accent.
Yeah. North Carolina has more places that you can pronounce in multiple ways, and the way that you are supposed to pronounce it is not the way that it looks like it should be pronounced in any other place in the world. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you all again for being here. It is incredibly gratifying. We're so happy that we're coming to speak to a room full of people who are organizing and building community like y'all are tonight. It is the most important thing that you could be doing right now, truly. And we know that that's true because you have to have relationships, you have to be building community to build resistance to the horror that's happening. We're very happy to be here in partnership with Fair Forsyth. I know folks have been, a lot of folks have been doing this in this room, have been doing this work a long time, and there might also be some people who are newly engaged with us tonight, which is amazing. Just out of curiosity, a show of hands, who in here has participated in voter outreach before? Yeah, okay, awesome. And who has canvassed specifically before? Okay, awesome, yes. Great. If you're new to doing voter outreach, thank you for being here, thank you for coming in. If you've been doing this a long time, thank you for continuing to be in it. So a little bit about us. FLIPNC is an all-volunteer organization. We started as an indivisible group back in 2017, and although we pretty quickly spun off into a different kind of organization, we're very grateful to have our indivisible community ties all these years. We decided pretty early on that we would focus exclusively on electoral action. We run our own direct voter outreach efforts, and FLIPNC is heavily data focused. So we run analysis on all of our voter outreach. And we use what we learn each cycle to adjust our voter outreach plans accordingly, so that we can be as effective and efficient as possible. And then we also share that information to help align groups optimize their voter outreach, and you'll hear more about that from Amy, who is one half of our data team. The other half is not here. So a lot of you probably out here today because you're here today because you're horrified about what's happening at the national level, and you want to know what we can do about it. And that's what activated us too when we started this group. When Trump was elected back in 2016, we were trying to figure out how to use our limited time and energy. We both had small children at the time, now we have large children, and day jobs, and we wanted to be efficient and effective. But we wanted to do something to fight for our rights and our democracy. And we do this because we believe that our systems should work for everyone, not just the wealthy and powerful. And we believe that the world's oldest democracy should be a place where we can compete on a level playing field, where the candidate that can win more votes and win over more voters with their values and ideas gets to represent the people and to govern. So basically we do this because we believe in a true democracy. And for far too long, even well before Trump came into the picture, that's not what we've had in North Carolina. More than 15 years ago, extremist Republicans took over our state legislature. They rigged our election maps in their favor, and they gained a veto-proof supermajority in our state legislature. And they've used that power, that ill-gotten power, to pass very extreme, unpopular legislation. They've made it harder to vote. They've taken much-needed resources from our public schools. And because they've effectively rigged our election maps, they do all this without really having to have regard for what the people of the state actually want. North Carolina has long been the canary in the coal mine for the kind of anti-democratic attacks that we're seeing at the national level now. So if we care about protecting our rights and our democracy, the best use of our time, we believe, is actually to focus our elections at the state level, because that's where so much power lies and where we can have a huge influence. So I'm going to pass it to Amy now.
We're going to switch back and forth, keep you on your toes. I'm a naturally fast talker. I'm going to try to slow it down. Signal me when I inevitably start going too fast. Okay, so the passage of the big, terrible bill is devastating. That's what I think a lot of us are focused on right now. Huge cuts to Medicaid and SNAP that we haven't seen before, to fund even more tax cuts for the rich. Huge amount of funding going to ICE, making it the biggest federal law enforcement agency in the country. That's mostly what we've been talking about right now. So you might be wondering why we're here tonight to talk with you about our state races, when Trump and his cronies are trying to dismantle our democracy and burn our federal institutions to the ground. And so, first, the more our rights and democracy are attacked, the more our state and local leaders matter. So our states are the best power levers for fighting back. Who is going to stand up to the Trump administration, and how are we going to protect that power? And so we've seen Governor Josh Stein, Attorney General Jeff Jackson standing up and fighting for our rights, and the Republican-controlled state legislature doing everything they can to try to take those powers away from our elected leaders. They've gone so far. Currently, they're trying to make it illegal for the Attorney General to file suit against Trump's unconstitutional actions. And so we need to protect our democratic leaders' power to fight back against attacks on our rights. And the more our federal institutions are dismantled, the more our state and local leaders matter there too. So who's going to fill critical government functions that the federal government is no longer doing? Like if we don't have a functioning federal Department of Education, it matters all the more that Mo Green is our state superintendent of public instruction and not that who's running against him.
Yeah.
And it matters all the more who sits in our state legislature and on our state courts, and right now, both are controlled by extremist Republicans. So Republicans on both our state courts, our State Court of Appeals and our state Supreme Court, just tried to help their buddy Jefferson Griffin steal an election. They were ultimately shut down by a conservative, Trump-appointed federal judge. But these Republicans on our state courts keep demonstrating that they're out to serve their own extreme partisan agenda rather than the people of North Carolina. And they have shown that they will bulldoze our rights and democracy to do it. So our Republican-controlled state legislature has just taken over our previously nonpartisan Board of Elections. They've installed extreme partisan Republicans after our state court, again, signed off on this unconstitutional power grab. And this is all connected. The extremist Republicans who control our state legislature only have that power because they rigged our maps, and they were only able to do that because a self-serving far-right majority on our state Supreme Court let them do it. And it's not just our state maps, our state legislative maps. The Republicans said that the Republicans in our legislature could rig our maps however they want, and they redo our congressional map. So on the left, you can see a fair map drawn by experts at the direction of our state Supreme Court before the Republican takeover. And so in 2022, the court ruled our maps had to be fair, and this is what we got. We sent 7 Republicans and 7 Democrats to Congress, very representative of our purple, evenly divided state. And then once Republicans took over our state courts, they recalled the same case that was already decided, completely unprecedented, and they said Republicans in the legislature could do whatever they wanted with our maps. So under the new maps, we ended up with 10 Republicans and 4 Democrats in our congressional delegation. Without that rigged map, Trump would not have come into office with a Republican majority in the US House. I want to emphasize that it's only that close because our state court said they can rig our maps however they want.
So Republicans currently hold large majorities on both of our statewide courts. Democrats only hold 2 out of the 7 seats on our state Supreme Court and 3 of the 15 seats on our statewide Court of Appeals. And we can't get fair maps or any real checks on those unconstitutional attacks on our democracy until we take back our state courts. So we know that this looks bad, but the good news is that we have a clear path to take back those courts by 2028, before the new maps are drawn for the next decade. So yes, this is a long-term plan, it's important to know that, but it is doable. In 2024, we elected Justice Allison Riggs to a full 8-year term.
Yay!
So close, so close. In 2026, every other Democrat currently serving on our state courts is up for election.
Wow.
So it's critical that we re-elect the incomparable, amazing Justice Anita Earls, who you'll hear more about later today, to the state Supreme Court. She is both a really lovely person and a total badass, and we are fully committed to making sure that she keeps her seats, and we hope that everyone in this room will join that fight. We also need to protect the only 3 Democratic seats on our Court of Appeals next year. If we lose those seats, all 15 seats on the state Court of Appeals will be held by Republicans. And the Court of Appeals is the final review for most of the cases that it hears. We already have plenty of examples of what can happen when our court is dominated by partisan, ideologically focused judges. We just heard about the recent Court of Appeals ruling to help Justice Griffin overturn the election that he lost. They allowed the legislature to remove constitutionally protected powers from the governor. and allowed a partisan Republican takeover of our state board of elections. So it is very important that we have a more balanced Court of Appeals because they hear their cases in 3-judge panels, and it's just important to have that different perspective on the court. So here's the plan. In 2028, so we talked about 2026, so we gotta protect seats in 2026. But in 2028, there are 3 Republicans on our state Supreme Court and 5 Republicans on the Court of Appeals that will be up for election. So in 2028, all the seats up for election on our statewide court will be opportunities to flip the balance of power on the court. That includes Jefferson Griffin, who spent 6 months trying to steal an election he lost, and 4 of his 6 court buddies who tried to help him do it. They will all be up for election in 2028. So by re-electing Justice Earls in 26 and flipping these Republican seats in 2028, we can take back our state courts in 3 years.
Yay.
Before new election happens. 3 years feels like a long time, but like if you're like us and you like see the difference, like you go from like toddler to a kid in 3 years, like it's nothing, right? It's not that long. So just to be clear too, when we say his buddies tried to help him steal an election, we literally mean his buddies. Here they are all hanging out together and wishing each other happy birthday on Twitter, which is something professional judges do. So if we want to protect our rights from extremists and restore democracy here in North Carolina, and we do, we need fair voting maps. That's critical, right? Because we need to be able to choose our representatives, not the other way around. And the first step to getting fair maps is to take back our state courts. So for 2026, yes, we absolutely need to flip Tom Tillis' seat. But most critically, if we want to protect and restore democracy in North Carolina, we have to take back our state courts. And in the meantime, and this is where y'all come in even more than helping with the courts, is we need to continue to prevent Republicans from having a veto-proof supermajority in our state legislature that they can use to continue to attack and dismantle our democracy here in North Carolina. And the good news is that this is all very doable. So here's the path. We prevent a GOP supermajority in our state legislature while we flip our courts, get fair maps, and then we elect true representation in Raleigh, take back a majority in Congress, save our democracy. There's a path. There are steps that can be taken that we can do. And I know it's a lot, like that feels like a lot, and it is a lot. It's not something we can do overnight, but we can do it, and frankly, the only other option is to just throw up our hands and let Trump and his cronies win, and that's not really an option for us. So this country has been through dark periods before. We can fight back, we have a clear path forward, and we know how to get it done. And the bottom line is that we need to win elections up and down the ballot to do it.
So a huge part of how we got here is that while we on the left were focused on Washington, Republicans were focused on taking over state legislatures and state courts. So it's important to understand that the GOP takeover of our state legislature and state courts is part of a larger systematic national plan from Republicans, especially successful here. You might have heard of Project Red Map. That's what happened 15 years ago when Republicans took over state legislatures. They had a plan to put a lot of money into those races they thought they could win, and they did that ahead of redistricting in 2010, and they used that to rig our election districts in their favor. And similarly, they've worked to take over state Supreme Courts to remove the checks on those legislatures when they violate our constitutions. So for years, Democrats held more than 2/3 of state Supreme Court seats across the US, but over the last decade, Republicans have taken a majority and have continued to increase their strategic hold on the courts, and we need to answer that. That's the appropriate reaction. We know from poll after poll the right-wing agenda is not popular. They're not out there winning over voters from their actual policies. They are continuing to get away with passing really unpopular legislation by taking power through anti-democratic means to subvert the will of voters and by lying to low-information voters about what they're actually doing. So to stop them, we need to get the word out to voters not just about what's happening at the national level, but also about what these extremist Republicans are doing here in North Carolina and about the importance of these races. We need them to vote for full ballot. We need them to know about not just what's happening at the top. And we need to do it while they continue to attack our voting rights and our voting access. And that means we can't afford to waste our time on ineffective voter outreach. So as Bree said, we started FLIPNC with a focus on direct voter outreach. We run analysis on everything we do to determine what worked and with which voters and what didn't. And we use that information to inform what we do going forward. So we've run and tested large-scale voter outreach on canvassing, phone banking, text banking, lit drop, letter and postcard writing in various forms with various voters and to varying degrees of impact. And so we're here tonight to share with you what we learned from past years of voter outreach and what it tells us about how to win in 2026 and beyond.
So 2026 is a midterm election year, which means that we have a huge opportunity to win elections just by turning out left-leaning voters. We don't necessarily have to convince people to change their minds. We just have to turn out the people who already agree with us. In a midterm, turnout is more than 20 points lower than in a presidential election year. And those folks who typically only turn out every 4 years, that's the low-hanging fruit. Those are the people that if we turn them out in the midterm, that will make the difference. Last time around, Trump was elected in 2016, and the 2018 midterm, that was not an election we would typically have expected high midterm turnout. It was a blue moon election year, meaning there were no federal statewide races at the top of the ticket. So normally we would expect to see very low midterm turnout. But what we saw was the highest midterm turnout in North Carolina this century, with a blue wave, that broke the Republican supermajorities in both chambers of our legislature that year. But it was not an even statewide wave. It was heavily driven by increased left-leaning turnout, leading to big swings in competitive legislative districts, where folks like us were out talking with voters about their concerns, about the stakes of the election, and about races that most people knew very little about and about why their vote mattered. So we saw this, we were able to see the specific effects of that work, and we know how to reach those voters and how to get them to turn out. So 2018 is an especially valuable year for teaching us how to win in 2026. In 2018, Trump was an unpopular president newly in office. And that year, there were no statewide federal races at the top of the ticket. So we didn't have huge amounts of money coming in for Senate or other races. In fact, the top of the ticket that year was Justice Anita Earls in her first race for North Carolina Supreme Court, which she won. And not having any federal statewide races that year made it a lot easier for us to isolate our impact of what we did and what worked. We know that our direct voter outreach was critical to flipping at least 3 competitive legislative districts by significantly increasing turnout among left-leaning voters. But it was not an even effect. So that analysis told us a lot about who to target and when and with what types of materials. So the lessons that we learned in 2018, we can now apply in 2026. We have a roadmap.
Forgot it was my turn already. Okay, so the first thing we learned is that we need to start early. We had the greatest effect on turnout among low propensity voters, so where we have the biggest room to increase, when we reached them early, well before the traditional GOTV period, get out and vote period, well before. We had the biggest impact on the lowest propensity voters when we reached them more than a year before the election. And those voters are also harder to reach. They are less likely to answer the door, so starting early gives us more time to try to reach them more than once. We also saw that while we significantly increased turnout among more left-leaning voters, we had very little impact on more moderate voters. Those folks are less likely to vote the way we'd like them to when they do turn out. So we dropped moderates from our program after 2018. We also learned that the kinds of materials we use make a huge difference. We used in 2018 2 kinds of lit. We had positive materials about the Democratic candidate, and negative lit about the Republican incumbent. And we found that the negative lit was much more effective. So just leaving the negative lit, even if no one answered the door, we're going to slow down, thank you. Even if no one answered the door, the negative lit increased turnout. We did not see that impact from positive lit about the Democratic candidate. So going forward, we've highlighted lit, that the bad things that Republicans are doing. Obviously, plenty of that to share. And people are usually interested in some more details about this. So here you can see the impact of FLIPNC's 2018 canvassing on two groups. Along the bottom, you can see the vote propensity score, so that's how likely they were to vote. And the folks on the left, not very likely to vote. On the right, very likely to vote. So all the way on the right, we don't have much room to increase turnout. On the left, tons of room to increase turnout. The dark blue at the bottom shows folks who turned out in 2014. That was the previous midterm. And then we had a blue wave in the competitive districts in 2018. Turnout went up quite a bit. That middle blue shows the increase that would have happened without any outreach from FLIPNC. And then the light blue at the top shows our impact over and above the blue wave. So the graph on the left shows moderate voters. You can see we had very little impact on turnout. And again, when they do turn out, they're much less likely to vote for the people we'd like them to vote for. And then on the right, you can see the light blue at the top. We had a much bigger impact on those more strongly left-leaning voters. So these are folks with a score, a partisan lean score of at least 70. That means if they vote, they have at least a 70% chance of voting for Democrats. And so since 2018, we've exclusively focused on those folks. Here you can see that just leaving materials behind increased turnout among low propensity voters. But again, it mattered what kind of lit. This impact was entirely driven by the negative lit about Republican incumbents. The positive lit did not have this effect. The style of lit that we left also seemed to matter. Our test showed that we had a greater impact with our leave behind materials than traditional mailers or door hangers. And we don't have specific analysis to point to on why that is. We think that it's our flyers. It's right under my notes, thank you. They're well designed enough to look like we might know what we're talking about, but they still look a little more grassroots. So what the flyer Bree's holding up, we compared that to mailers and to traditional door hangers. So a lot of people have said, maybe you should have door hangers because they look so much nicer. But we have a bigger impact from this. We think people pay, we don't know, but we think people pay more attention to it because it looks more grassroots. We are not suggesting that Democratic candidates use these instead of door hangers. They obviously need to look more professional than we do, but this works for us as a grassroots group.
So based on analysis from past elections, we know we have the greatest impact on more left-leaning voters, a greater impact when we reach voters early, many months before an election, which is counterintuitive for a lot of folks, especially if you've been doing this work for a long time, but we definitely saw that. And just leaving lit behind when it's the right kind of materials can make a difference. So armed with that information, in 2024, we turned to statewide judicial races, focusing on those more left-leaning voters. And knowing that just leaving materials behind can make a difference, we ran both canvassing and lit drop, which is similar to canvassing, but instead of knocking and trying to have a conversation, you just leave the lit at the door on your targeted lists, or leaving them at targeted doors, but you just leave it and go. We ran monthly canvasses in Durham, where we live, as well as pop-up canvases in other places, and we supported other groups that wanted to run their own canvases in different parts of the state. We ran lit drop statewide, reaching voters in 29 counties, although more than half of that was in Durham and Orange, where most of our volunteers are concentrated. And we provided lit to other groups to distribute with their activities as well. In summation, through canvassing and lit drop, directly and through our partners, we reached 56,000 doors with lit about our state court races in 2024. We held back a random sample statewide so that we could measure our impact. Canvassing and lit drop significantly reduced ballot drop-off, which is when people come out to vote, but they don't complete the full ballot. In blue precincts that we fully saturated with lit, we cut ballot drop-off in half.
Wow.
Our canvassing and lit drop improved Justice Riggs' margin relative to Harris, and canvassing in particular had an even greater impact on the margin in the Court of Appeals races, just not quite enough to close the gap last year. Overall, canvassing was about twice as effective per similarly sized turf, although you can reach a lot more doors faster with lit drop. So if you're up for knocking doors, we highly encourage you to canvass. But if you're not, targeted lit drop is a great use of your time, and the earlier the better. We're already starting to do canvassing in Durham. And we saw this effect even in a presidential election year with really high turnout, and in a midterm, we can have a much greater effect, so keep that in mind. Knocking or lit dropping the same number of doors will make a bigger difference when we're doing it next year and this year and for a midterm election next year. Because there's a lot more room to turn people out, and folks are also not being inundated with election messages like we all were last year.
So in addition to running and supporting canvassing and lit drop focused on the judicial races last year, one of our partners, Indivisible Charlotte, we've worked with for several cycles, they wanted to continue focusing exclusively on a particular legislative race. You might remember the deceitful Tricia Coughlin. Yeah, she ran in 2022 as a progressive Democrat, switched parties 3 months into her term, handing Republicans a veto-proof supermajority that they used to override every one of Governor Cooper's vetoes for 2 years. So Republicans rewarded her by redrawing her district from strongly Democratic to its current form, which is slightly Republican-leaning. Take a look at that gerrymander there. It could not be more obvious. So our friends at Indivisible Charlotte made it their mission to try to unseat her in 2024. And so we supported their canvasses with materials, voter targeting, and analysis and voter lists. And they used the same canvassing scores and same style of negative lit that we did, focusing on why Coughlin was bad. They worked really hard to flip the districts. They got very close, even in an unfavorable election year. They were able to fully saturate 3 precincts in the district. Those are the darkly shaded precincts. The lighter colors are the ones adjacent. We're calling those controls on the next slide, and then you can see the district as a whole. Their impact was clear. In the precincts that they fully saturated, Democratic candidate Nicole Sidman ran ahead of Harris by 1.2 points. By comparison, she ran behind Harris by 1.8 points in the controls, so the directly adjacent precincts that they did not hit. So that's a 3-point difference between the target precincts and the controls in a race where the margin was less than half a point. And again, this is just looking at her performance relative to Harris. So what's especially interesting to us here is that they use the same voter targets, same style of lit, but the impact we saw here was more on vote switching, so people voting for the Democrat instead of the Republican. We were turning people out, making sure they voted down ballots. So it's natural to think that if you want to persuade people to vote for a Democrat over a Republican, that you should target people in the middle. But those folks tend to be more ambivalent, less engaged, harder to move, and we see this really clear impact when we're targeting more left-leaning voters in the purple precincts. So we can look at turnout by individual, and we can't look at how an individual voted, so we can't tell, was this all the impact of the people we talked to, or maybe there are people living in the home who are not scored as left-leaning, but they're living with someone left-leaning, and so when we reach those people, they might be more receptive than folks with a similar score elsewhere. But we do know that it works, and that this targeting works for moving people in purple districts. And so our friends at Indivisible Charlotte, they decided that for 2026, they are again going to try to unseat Trisha Cotham. Yes, please applaud that. It will be a much more favorable year, and they're going to focus on our state court races. Okay, so like Indivisible Charlotte, you have a great opportunity to both turn out left-leaning voters, focus on our state court races, and help flip a Republican-held legislative district. So NC House District 74, where we are right now, it is a right-leaning district, but it is winnable for a strong Democratic candidate. Democrat Amy Taylor North lost the seat by just 3.6 points last year. That was a very unfavorable election year. She overperformed other Democrats in the district, which leans further right. Trump carried it by 7.5 points. That's a great overperformance in an unfavorable year. So this is flippable if she runs again, if another really strong candidate runs again. It's not an easy win, but there were several Democratic candidates who flipped similarly right-leaning districts in 2018. So we have the right conditions with a strong candidate. We have been talking a lot about canvassing and lit drop, and you might be wondering about other forms of voter outreach. We ran our highly effective text banking campaign. It's not one of those annoying texts that you get. We send early voting and election date information specific to the person's county and then their polling location with the sites and times to about 1 million left-leaning voters across the state. It's a unique campaign. We don't ask people for anything. We don't say, will you vote? We don't say, will you vote for this candidate? We just give them the information and ask if they have any questions. So this is a highly effective campaign. We wish everyone would stop doing the other text banking.
Yes.
So that people,
We all do.
but in all, in 2024, we added about 5,000 net votes statewide for Democrats up and down the ballot, and an additional 700 votes for Justice Riggs specifically in a race that was decided by 734 votes. So we know in a close race, we can make the difference in getting critical candidates over the finish line. I'm going to duck behind the screen now. We also tested letter writing and postcard writing across multiple years in campaign designs. We tested it again in 2024 and found no measurable impacts. No one's taking it away. There will be opportunities if you love doing that. Please don't send me hate mail. I did get anonymous hate mail after presenting our analysis once.
Were they on postcards?
It was an email. Thank you, that's a great one. Yeah, so there will be opportunities. We're just saying if you want the best use of your time, canvassing, lit drop, or even talking with your network about these races is a much better use of your time.
Okay, so what do we want to take away from our very, hopefully informative, long-winded presentation? There's a lot of words and lots of slides, but thank you for bearing with us, and we know that you're all here because you want and we want to do something to protect our rights and our freedoms and our democracy. And what we want you to take away from this conversation is that the key to doing that is the kind of targeted work that we know works, that we know is effective to take back our state courts and hold the line to prevent a Republican supermajority in our legislature until we can get fair maps. At FLIPNC, we really like measurable goals. We like to go for something that we will know if we accomplished it or not, and this is one of those things. We must re-elect Justice Earls and protect our 3 Democratic-held seats on the Court of Appeals in 2026. If we can protect those seats, we have a path to take back our state courts within 3 years, before the new maps are drawn in 2031. The impacts of fair maps will be felt in every issue that is touched by government, which is to say, pretty much everything. And while we continue to work towards fair maps, we must continue to protect the power of Governor Stein's veto by preventing a Republican supermajority in our state legislature. And if you're in Forsyth County, you have the opportunity to do both. So you really have a golden opportunity to make a huge difference here. The other thing that we want you to take away is that despite the importance of our state courts and legislative races, most people don't know anything about them. Nothing. So it is critical that we spread the word, and we know what works to do that. Reaching voters at doors works. I know it's exhausting sometimes. I know canvassing, a lot of people feel a lot of ways about it, but it works. Everyone and their mother is vying for people's attention online. And we encourage you to share information online about these races. We know that we have information on our site, we have an Instagram account, please follow us, share it online. But we know that the one surefire way to break through and not be at the mercy of the algorithm is by having face-to-face conversations. Or at least leaving behind some useful information in the form of LIT. So talking to your people also works. A lot of very politically engaged people don't know about the importance of our state courts. I didn't until pretty recently. I didn't appreciate how important they were. And people don't understand that the path to restoring democracy and true representation in Raleigh and in DC runs through our courts. You are a trusted messenger for people in your personal network. Folks will listen to you, whether it's family, friends, or coworkers. You're going to be able to break through in ways that the internet gods will not. If you can find a way to talk with people about these races, including the legislative races, you will be sharing crucial information that most people simply don't know. And we found when we were knocking doors in 2018 that people were very interested once they knew what we were talking about and they knew that their vote, how important their vote was. So we also suggest, and we think it's a useful thing to enlist other high propensity voters. I'm guessing most folks in this room are pretty regular voters. If you've got other people in your network who are high propensity voters, spread the word. Canvassing is hard to scale. Talking with friends and family is hard to scale. But they are the most effective ways to communicate election information. So encourage folks in your orbit who are worried about what's happening to join a canvass, do a lit drop, or just talk with their friends about these races. The last thing to take away is that we have to take advantage of this opportunity that a midterm election with a Trump backlash represents. People are unhappy, to say the least, with the direction of this country. And we're already seeing it strongly in the polling. It is our job to channel that fear and anger into electoral action that shifts power and builds momentum towards something better than oligarchy and authoritarianism.
Amen. Yeah.
Every action that you take now matters. So keep showing up and building together. Canvass and lit drop, especially outside the typical election cycle. We're partnering with Fair Forsyth to support canvassing and lit drop opportunities. We're here for you for whatever you need. Spread the word about the importance of our state court races, please. Our website, FLIPNC, has info under the Fair Maps Alliance tab, and more is coming soon. Just sharing that info and talking about these races with your people is really important and will make a difference. And if you have like-minded friends and neighbors in House District 74, make sure to talk with them about that race as well.
Well, I don't know about y'all, but I'm feeling inspired.
Yes.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
You guys ready? What are we gonna do? Canvas. Yes, canvas. So I'm Terry LeGrand. I know many of you I don't know. I ran in the 2018 that was referenced. I ran that year. Came up a little bit short, but had a great experience running that race and met a lot of amazing people. So I decided to do it again in 2020. Not so great. A little different experience that year, but still really grateful for having had the opportunity to be a candidate and run to represent the good people of Forsyth County. So now I have thrown my lot in with Valerie, and we are working really hard to try to make a difference for these justices and for House District 74, which, as you've heard, is flippable. So my job in all of this is going to be leading the canvasses. So we already have canvasses scheduled as Amy and Bree emphasized starting now is so important. So we've already started. We went out yesterday, even despite the rain. 3 of us intrepid souls went out and knocked on some doors. They were really great doors. These were really people who were very happy to hear from us, very happy to get the information. Not a single one of them knew who Jeffrey Singer was. So we made a difference just in those few doors that we were able to knock before the rain started in earnest. And those are the kind of doors that we're going to be knocking. So people who are going to be friendly to us, they're not intimidating folks. Most of them answered their doors yesterday, and they were happy to get that information from us because while most of them are on our side, so to speak, they don't know who represents them in Raleigh. And it's very important that they do know so that they stay on the ballot and vote all the way down. So we haven't started yet on the judicial races, but we will. We'll incorporate them in. We're planning to do this until daylight savings time ends, and then we'll pick back up in March and do it until GOTV starts around October. So it's a long-range plan, but if all of you guys come with us and spread the word, then we can make a huge difference by flipping House District 74, protecting the veto, the governor's veto, and re-electing our justices on the Court of Appeals and Justice Earls. So we have some links to sign up via Mobilize on our website. Please click on that or use the QR code to get to our website.
And we'll send an email.
And we will send an email with some links as well to follow up after tonight, so thank you for signing in. We will start doing lit drops as well. We're going to be coordinating with these guys to help us find the best strategy for doing those lit drops. Last summer, I had a bin on my porch with turfs where people could just come by, pick up a packet with a turf and the lit, and they could go and do the lit drops on their own time. So we'll probably do something similar to that this cycle as well. If you are unable to canvass, unable to lit drop, we ask that you support our efforts and support FLIPNC by making a donation. Again, use the QR code and you can make a donation. Any amount will help. This is all volunteer, so not a super expensive enterprise, but we do have to pay for the lit and to support some of the technology that we use to get the turfs. We are going to focus on precincts 74 and 123. Those are Democratic-leaning precincts, and we're going to try to fully saturate those 2 precincts.
And more.
And more. Let me just say that through some of these darkest hours since November, what I keep reminding myself is that having joy and being in community with people is a form of resistance. So as many doors as we knock, it's also equally important that you find your joy, and that in and of itself is part of how we fight back and get our democracy back. So thank you so much for being here tonight.